One sentence changed everything for me. Not while I was working, not while I was studying psychology, but while I was trying to understand both. The sentence was this: adaptation is not damage. At first, those words may sound almost identical. They are not. Understanding the difference changes everything that follows. Because if you believe something is damaged, your first question becomes, how do I fix it? But if you understand something as adaptation, a different question becomes possible. Why did my nervous system learn this? And what would it take for it to learn something different? That's the question the Psychology for Escort framework was built to answer. Within the framework, adaptation isn't understood as something that simply happens to you. It's understood as something your nervous system gradually builds in response to repeated psychological demands. Every repeated demand teaches the system what becomes useful. The nervous system doesn't ask whether those demands are good or bad. It asks something much simpler. What response helps me function here? And then it learns that response until it becomes automatic. That's not failure. That's exactly what a healthy nervous system is designed to do. And once you understand adaptation that way, another possibility opens. The question is no longer, what's wrong with me? The question becomes, what has my nervous system been learning? Because understanding how something was learned also begins to explain how it can gradually become more flexible again. That's where many women become confused. Because adaptation often feels like loss. Perhaps emotions feel quieter. Perhaps closeness feels different. Perhaps your body remains regulated when you expected it to soften. Those experiences are real, and the framework doesn't deny them, but it interprets them differently, not as evidence that something broke, as evidence that something was learned. The nervous system simply becomes increasingly efficient at whatever it repeated. So adaptation explains what happened. Meaning determines what happens next. The story we tell ourselves matters. If the story is, something is wrong with me, everything becomes organized about fixing ourselves. But if the story becomes, my nervous system adapted to the conditions it lived in, curiosity replaces shame. Understanding replaces self-judgment. The experience itself hasn't changed, but the relationship to it has. And that changes what becomes possible. Because understanding creates something that self-judgment never can. Choice. This is why the final long-term adaptive effect within the Psychology for Escort framework is integration. Integration doesn't mean returning to who you were before, because life doesn't move backwards. Integration also doesn't mean keeping every adaptation exactly as it is. Some adaptations continue to serve you, others no longer do. Integration means understanding the difference, keeping what serves your life, gently reshaping what no longer does. Not fighting your adaptations, understanding them, working with them, allowing them to become flexible again. That's why I built the Psychology for Escort framework. The framework was never built to tell women who they are. It was built to help them understand what repeated paid intimacy and companionship can gradually ask of the mind. Because what's understood can be worked with. If you have watched all 4 videos, you now understand the foundation of the Psychology for Escort framework, what it is and why it's built, how adaptation develops, how the mechanisms work together, and why adaptation should not automatically be understood as damage. Everything else I teach builds on this foundation. In the Psychologist for Escorts podcast, we'll explore each mechanism in much greater depth, one season at a time. Because understanding doesn't happen all at once. It develops, just as adaptation does. I'm Eva Valora, and thank you for watching. And if you would like to explore the framework further, or read my monthly essays, visit psychologyforescorts.com.